Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and before we get started, I've got an all call. If you're a coach or an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry who's trying to grow your business without burning out, I want to personally invite you to apply for the Growth Circle. The Growth Circle is our business accelerator program at TEC, and it's designed specifically to serve providers like you in the health and fitness industry. People who are incredible at what they do, but they need a proven framework and real support to actually scale. Let's be real, running a coaching business can feel like a grind. You're juggling programming and client communication, marketing, admin work, and somehow you're still trying to grow your business. That's where the Growth Circle comes in. Inside the program, we help you nail down your ideal client and get really clear on what your offer is. We help you build a consistent lead gen process so you're not wondering where your next client comes from. We help you improve your sales skills without feeling salesy. And most importantly, create systems and support so that you're not doing it alone. You'll be a part of a driven community of other business owners in this space who get it. We host regular group calls, team intensives, mastermind sessions to make sure you're never stuck trying to figure it out in a silo. So if you're tired of winging it, if you're tired of trying to do it all by yourself, to recreate the wheel, figure out what levers to pull, what's broken and what's not, if you're ready to turn your passion into a business that actually works for you, I want to invite you to apply. You can find the link to the Growth Circle in our show notes. And I want you to really think about what's best for you and your business. I want you to think about how your business can really make an impact on the industry and how it can give you the life that you're excited about and make the money that you deserve, working with the clients that you love, spending time investing in the things that you care about and you're passionate about. So if this is a problem you're committed to solving and you want to take your business to the next level, again, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. Hello. It is great to have you back. One of the things, as many of you know, that we talk about often on Endurance Minded is the fact that endurance isn't built in big dramatic moments. It's built in those small decisions repeated over time, those commitments that we make to ourselves and to others, the ones that are seemingly small, the routines we return to when the motivation fades. And those habits really slowly shape who we become. And one of the most powerful places that I've seen this show up is how that plays out in our relationship with movement and physical training. For a lot of people, fitness starts as something external. It might be about looking a certain way or reaching a goal or chasing performance. But over time, if you stick with it long enough, it begins to become something much deeper. It becomes a practice that builds resilience, it builds self-trust, and it builds a type of discipline that impacts and carries into all other parts of our life. Today's guest, Chris Ryan, has spent years helping people discover exactly that connection. Chris is a coach, an entrepreneur. He's a former Division I track and field athlete who's built Chris Ryan Fitness and the idea that movement should be something that people can sustain for the long term. His work focuses on making fitness accessible, enjoyable, and above all else, rooted in community rather than just intensity and short-term results. Through his coaching programs and his online community, Chris has helped thousands of people reconnect with their bodies and build habits that support strength, longevity, and consistency. In this conversation, we explore what it really takes to stay consistent and train over long periods of time. We talk about why motivation is so often misunderstood and how fitness can become a powerful tool for building resilience far beyond the gym or the track or trail or road. We also talk about the role of community in sustaining healthy habits, the shift from performance-focused training to a longevity-focused movement practice, and how physical routines can quietly shape both our identity and our mindset over time. This episode is a reminder that endurance isn't just about pushing harder. Sometimes it's about learning how to show up consistently. It's about listening to our bodies, and it's about building sustainability, building practices that we can trust, we can come back to time and time again, year after year, season after season. And I could not be more excited to share Chris's perspective and all that he's learned through his journey with you. So with that, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Chris Ryan. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Taylor. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, same. Well, let's dive right in. I always like to, typically when I am lucky enough to have someone on the show, I like to start where most great stories start, which is at the beginning. So take us back, and maybe specifically, I know you have a deep history as an athlete, and now have gone on to do all kinds of great things on all around the world and help thousands and thousands of folks. But at the very beginning there, what was your first real experience or time when you felt like you pushed yourself, and how did that kind of spark in you, ultimately where you're at now?
Oh, great question. Great question. I love that question. I think it goes back a long time to when I was young. I was probably about 5 years old. My dad, he was a dentist, and on Thursdays he would work half a days. And when I was young in kindergarten, back in Michigan, when I was growing up, we would get picked up probably by 2:00 or so. So he would work his half a day then to, help out his body and his back from being a dentist. And then we would have these so-called special Thursdays. And then he was always into health and fitness from 1970s and powerlifting and the Arnold days. My middle name's actually Conan. Based on Arnold, so that's a fun fact right there.
That's cool.
We'd have these special Thursdays, and my dad was always very big into interval training. He liked to run on grass because he had bad feet, but he would do his little sprint intervals, right, to stay athletic and strong, and he just made him feel good. And this is long before he kind of really knew other than the health benefits, but he would spot me as his rabbit, and then he would do his whatever 100 yards sprints or something like a soccer field length or a football field length, and I might be out at the 50. But, and I would do whatever I would do, probably run to the end and just kind of laugh and have fun. And that was the beginning stages of fitness for me, learning that fitness is fun, learning that running makes you feel free, doing it with your dad or doing it with a loved one is even better. And then we would always go celebrate with a burger and a milkshake afterward, which probably defeated the purpose overall. But at the same time, it was the camaraderie around that sideline for me. And I recently lost my dad this last May. He was 80. He lived a full life. I'm very fortunate to have had him for 45 years of my life. So I think to lead off with that standpoint, because he's really the one that taught me that foundation of health and fitness, and then kind of pushed me into where I am now, into the health and fitness world. So, but I think it always starts somewhere, and usually always starts on the home front. It really does. I think parents have so much influence, either positive or negative, on their kids. I'm a dad of 3 now, and I hope that I can offer the same foundation without being pushing to the kids, and just kind of making it fun, and realize that fitness should be fun at the end of the day. You play a sport, and hopefully that sets off a good pattern for them going forward in the future, especially as now you see the benefits coming into my mid 40s. You see the benefits. I look at fitness very differently now than I used to, right? I was a college level athlete in track and field at the University of Florida in middle distance. So if you have a middle distance endurance podcast at some point, I had a love-hate relationship with endurance, but I think that you hit it on home in one of your recent podcasts about how it's not necessarily endurance of that event. It's endurance for your lifetime. It's the longevity of what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, whether it's in sports, in the training aspect, in your relationships with your spouse, with your relationships with yourself, your businesses as an entrepreneur, whatever it might be. It's about showing up, being disciplined, being consistent every day that you can to be the best possible And for me, that's really where it started, is when my earliest memories around 5 years old, back there on backside of this hill in Flushing, Michigan, doing some hill sprints and some football field sprints. It was always fun. Always fun.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, and occasionally he'd let me beat him. But for the most part, it was kind of funny because I don't. Do you have kids, Taylor?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So I have two sons, and it's kind of fun. I have two sons, and then a daughter in the middle, and it's kind of fun to like let them beat you every once in a while, but only if they're pushing you enough. But then all of a sudden, you just kind of beat them too, and it's kind of fun to like let them really earn it. You don't want to give them anything for free, but if they're like pushing enough, then it's always fun to like kind of let them. Oh, dang! You got me at the lean on the line that time, or whatever. You know.
I love that.
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's great. Yeah, it sounds like your dad was an incredible example. I love that. That's I think some of my greatest memories for me were doing same thing, running around and playing sports with parents and I think that sets the tone for how that manifests in your life. You mentioned I know you're a D1 athlete, like you said, in middle distance track and field.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously that's a heavily performance oriented way to engage in fitness, right? It is about speed, it's
Yes.
about performance, and that goes without saying. But I'm curious, one of the things that comes to mind when I think about that, and I was, similarly, I was, heavily competitive in college and out of college, but what was there a turning point where it went from, that performance-based fitness to something deeper?
Another good question. As far as deeper, you mean from trying to be like a top level athlete to something more meaningful at the end, or
or maybe or maybe like kind of that identity shift too. I know that's something that I have continued to kind of, I think, maybe wrestle with, for lack of a better word, is go from someone who's extremely performance oriented to still has goals, but now and in middle age, it's longevity, it's about movement quality. It's about, and so I think there's always these shifts, but I'm curious, just if any, in whatever time period or season of your life, was there a turning point, or maybe what was that first one where you're like, oh, this means something more to me than just running fast?
Yeah, I think, so interestingly enough, my career lasted 2 years in college. Middle distance running is very tough on your body. Sustain injury because you're constant, especially with the event I did, the 800 meters. If anyone knows anything about running, you say the 800 to anybody, everyone's like, oh, it's like you just looked at like a crash site or something. Like, where I either wanted to be a 400 meter person or a miler, because those are kind of more glory events. The 800 is this purgatory of just lactic acid, just terribleness, if you want to call it that. But the cool part about track and field is that you can think you want to like be like a 100-meter person or a marathoner or anything in between, but you can't really, like, a marathoner can't be a 100-meter person at elite level, and a 100-meter person can't be an elite, and it's so specific. Very rarely do you ever have anyone that can like be like the Michael Johnson, the 2-4 person, or like the 1-2 person, right? Even like Noah Lyles is more of a 200 than a 100 person, right? At times, it's just like, and then you get into the, generally speaking, the milers kind of all gravitate every couple years that they get a little older. They kind of like, oh, I'm a 3K, now I'm a 5K, now I'm a 10K. And then guess what? They all, eventually, if they're still in it, they like to gravitate up to the marathon and that sort of a thing. But for me, it really, I got injured. And then I was a skinny runt, 6 foot tall, 135 pounds. And then in about 7-8 months, I want to say, in college, once again, you're at peak testosterone at 20 years old as a guy, right? I went from like running 40 miles in the heat to running like 0 and just lifting weights. I put on 40 pounds of muscle. So I went to like 175, like within 7-8 months. And so it was the first time in my life I actually had like quote unquote muscles, which felt good, in a certain way, still being athletic and strong. And what was funny enough is as I put on that weight, I didn't really get much worse. After I had a bad hamstring tear. After I eventually rehabbed my hamstring fully, I was actually much faster because I was able to put more power into it, like faster over the course of like 40 to 100 meters. My 100-meter time actually went down by like 0.3, 0.4 seconds. Not that I was really racing at that point, but it was always kind of fun to play around with the numbers to see. My endurance obviously went down, right? Like that's a no-brainer. Like if you weigh 40 pounds more, 50, 45 pounds more, eventually is what I got up to. It was like in the low 180s after the course of a year or so. But for me to transition at that point and to see what like real strength was a lot of fun. And then that was kind of like part A, in my opinion. Part B is in my early 30s, I started getting into CrossFit. And for me, that was interesting because I was able to do some sort of sport for the first time in a decade at a competitive level. And I hadn't been competitive for about 10 years up to that point. And I was good enough to become a regional qualifier in the Northeast regional, competed up at the Reebok HQ and everything. And love it or hate CrossFit, it taught me a lot about competitiveness. It got me into doing different exercises, if you will, that I normally didn't do, but I had always done certain style of CrossFit style workouts in my 20s where I would like to still run, but more interval based. Like I'd like to do like a 200, 400 meter run or some sort of sprint coupled with some other things. And then, so I'd always stay more athletic than just like endurance based. But back to what we were talking about with the bridge run in South Carolina, the Mount Pleasant bridge run over to Charleston, which is brutal in a fun way, but it's always falls over Final Four weekend, so you can get some beer and chicken wings at the end with your friends. So it's always a good race. Do a little plug for that race down there as well, and some good and quad burn for you. But you can definitely get some hills in the low country down there. And then I did that a few times with my cousins and my brother, and that was fun in my 30s. But what was funny enough is my 10K time, just doing basic running, like a little bit more, not mileage at all by any standards, right? But my 10K would only be like off 10% of what it used to be back in the day. Like it wasn't that far off, even though I was probably about 40 pounds heavier at the time with not fat, but with muscle. But you weren't like the skinny endurance runner, right? And because you're able to put enough power into your stride. And as long as you kept your VO2 relatively high by cross training standards with some sort of Airdyne or Echo bike or rowing machine, sprint intervals, that sort of a thing. And, I'm very big. I've always been big on like the Norwegian 4x4 for years. I know it's kind of come into play, but it's kind of like the poor person's version of like keeping the VO2 max high in a good way. So I still love that style of workout. I've always been much more of an efficiency expert for time. Once again, I have 3 kids. It's like I'm building businesses. It's like you want to see like what can be like 80 or 90% of the way there. I don't really need to be 100% of the way there anymore at this point in my life. But what can give me that 80 or 90% point, and I'm good. Like I just feel good. My body feels good. I don't have any knee pain. I'm not having to be away from my family for 3 or 5 hours. At a time to like get a workout in. Like I had friends training for Ironmans before, and that's a commitment. I mean, that's like a huge commitment. Hats off to everyone that can do that. But it's also, it's like it's kind of like an endurance golf, right? Like where I'm not a big golfer myself. I like golf, but it's like it takes a long time to do it, right? If you play in 18 holes, it takes 4 or 5 hours. If you're training hard for an Ironman, for instance, it takes a long time too. So for me, it's about like what can be the best bang for your buck as far as like endurance meets, which kind of goes back to my 800 meter training, even though I don't want to say it does, but it does. It kind of is like where endurance meets like the anaerobic capacity, and it kind of falls in between the two. And then I think that was part B. And then part C for me is where I'm at now, mid 40s, 45 years old. And I see fitness for the first time as longevity based internally in my head. I don't just see, of course, I've always thought of fitness as longevity, but now I can actually see it compounding. It's kind of like if you start working in your 20s and you got this thing called the retirement fund, 401k or IRA, and you start out and you get whatever it is deducted from your paycheck, right? Or your funds. And it's like, wow, this is going to take forever to get up to where it needs to go, right? But it's like that little like snowflake effect that turns into a snowball that eventually turns into like a big avalanche coming down the mountainside, right? It's the same thing for like when you get in your mid 40s, like if you've been putting away money and saving, oh, wow, it looks pretty good most days. Like it's like compounding, you see some sort of return on your investment. And also as in sports and fitness, if you just kind of do those right things 80, 90% of the time, all of a sudden by your mid 40s, you're like, damn, I'm like doing pretty decent. And like my biological clock is like I'm 30. And you look at other people that made other choices, whether it's, by nutrition or too much alcohol or lack of sleep or just not putting in that effort in the fitness front and the health front. And all of a sudden you look at them and they're like the exact opposite. They might be more in line with like a 55-year-old or 60-year-old, right? With their bodies at 45. And so for me, it's like at 45, I'm like, I feel good. Like yeah, I'm not going to be able to go out and run anywhere close to what I used to. But overall, I'm still pretty fast. Like I'm still like able to go out and run around a 40-minute 10K with very minimal training. And, as far as like, but I like that once again, that try to do that efficient 4x4 or four Norwegian program, which is like the 4 minutes on and 3 minutes like walk rest type situation, which if I do that around 6 minute mile pace once a week, I mean, I do like 4 miles a week and I'm still able to be like pretty decent endurance wise. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just kind of keeps that base going. I'm not going to improve upon that, but because I know what it would take to improve upon that. But, for the most part, it might like trickle down to like a 5:45 pace or something if I'm like having a really good day. But I'm not going to be able to get down to like sub fives. And I don't really care to because I know what that's going to take at this point in time. And at 45 years old, when I don't want to put in like 20 to 30, 40 miles a week or more, then I know that like, okay, I'm good because I can still run a sub 13-second 100 meters, which is always important for me to maintain that speed. Just in the back of my head, I always feel like you always have to have those like certain lifts if you do, or those certain runs if you do. I'm sure you have it yourself. There might be a trail that you do that like, okay, I know if I hit this trail in under an hour, I'm good. I feel good for my next race. Or if I know I can hit these 10 long grinding hill sprints, then I know I'm good. Right. And it's kind of like those foundation workouts for me. So I think that's like kind of like the A, B, and C portions of my track record post competitive days as a D1 athlete,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's such a, I mean, again, it's something that I've found myself that resonates, I connect with that. Just these kind of, if you're lucky enough to stay in it for long enough, I think, you have these benchmarks, right? These like shifts where you find yourself, in a lot of ways, maybe kind of reinventing yourself, or certainly kind of transitioning and taking the skills from one thing and they mean something different and they get deployed differently. But, you're talking about kind of, the time and energy expenditure and how that means something different for you now at 45 than it did when you were younger. And, I think we all certainly have to, wrestle with that in some form or fashion. But it makes me think about, I think that is certainly one of the biggest constraints when it comes to people talking about what is keeping them from their health and fitness goals is, I don't have the time, or it's hard to start, or it's, there's some sort of like bandwidth based component there. But maybe even drilling down a little more, I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think separates someone that stays consistent versus someone that, kind of flames out, right? Because you nailed it. You're right. There's two choices, right? And I think certainly when you get into middle age, you see in very stark contrast people that have made decisions that have aligned with continued consistency, or people that haven't, and they're living wildly different lives in terms of quality, in terms of access to experiences, in terms of all that. So from your perspective, what's the separator there?
That's a very interesting question. I think that the separator is the ability to just have small victories, small wins, if you will. It's like just to say, okay, I just got to do like tomorrow. Like that's it. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to do that small victory and not really like lose sight of it. Cause it's really like those small victories that over the course of time end up being the big things down the line. Like you didn't get to where you're at your level because you were like, oh man, I watched this endurance documentary and boy, I really like dropped my marathon time to a sub 3 by watching that, like I didn't get to where I'm at, without some, obviously there's always like drawbacks. And I feel like sometimes like where it's like a push forward, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes it could be like 10 steps forward and 100 steps back. Like my college career didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, right? Like I thought I was going to be like a SEC champion. I thought I might go to the USA trials, possible Olympian. And like, it didn't turn out that way, but guess what? I was able to double major. I was able to take internships. I worked overseas. I was able to see the world like in a whole different manner as just like a regular college student. Eventually went in as an entrepreneur and built businesses along the way. And so the track and field season in college actually kind of like goes into mid to late June, and it's a different type of season. So like a lot of times the internships weren't there. So like that was a win for myself, right? It wasn't necessarily like just because you go down one road doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go down another road at some point in your life. Transition periods are great, but at the same time, I didn't lose the fact that I still thought the macro levels of being healthy, right? Whatever that definition was for me at the time in my life. In my 20s, it was, can I put, 3 big wheels on the side and bench and also do like a sub 12-second 100 meters or a 4.5, 4.6 40 or whatever, right? To stay at like that top speed. And then also run that 10K with my friends without huffing and puffing, And for the most part, I was able to maintain that kind of like that strength endurance balance for the longest time. And now it's like, obviously at 45, cut down a little bit, but still it's like there in some way, shape or form. And I just feel like it feels good. Like my body feels good in a way that I'm excited about it. Like I'm actually excited to be 45 years old and be like, I kind of feel like I'm like that older guy that's like, holy cow, like you can hang with the younger people. And for me, it's kind of funny because like some of these people that you'll see like that will see you either in the gym or running or whatever, they'll think you're far younger than you are. Right. Especially if you're like wearing a hat and they can't really see like your face and be like the bags under my eyes because I'm tired. It's like, They're like, oh, wow, look at that guy. Oh, wow, he's 40. If you said that to most people, they would be like, wow, that's really cool. Like, what are you training for? I'm like, I'm just training for life, trying to be like, chase my kids around and be athletic as long as possible. I want to be that grandfather that's able to like hike and ski with the grandkids and stuff. I don't want to be like old at 70. I think 70 is like, just a stepping stone. I think you could be well fit and mobile and athletic into your 80s and 90s for sure if you do it right,
Yeah, agreed. So I love the small wins piece. Let's say someone struggles, or maybe let's even just admit that we know that people struggle to connect those small wins or kind of see that in real time. Mm-hmm. What's your process for helping someone reconnect when they don't see those small wins, and then ultimately motivation, that connection to why they were doing it to begin with, starts to wane? How do you help someone get back to it or pull them back into it?
Yeah, I think that you got to help the person understand that it might sound like tough love, but sometimes tough love is what needs to be had. And it's just very real, is that we don't really have a choice, right? Because we are either going to get stronger and more mobile, or we're going to get tighter and atrophy, right? Like our muscles don't really stay in like a purgatory zone, right? Like if you and I just sit in chairs all day long, even though we're relatively fit guys, but if I just sat here all day long, my hamstrings would get tight, my butt would atrophy, my hip flexors would shorten, my core would weaken. And imagine just doing that day after day. And you during podcasts and doing businesses and whatever else, like without running. And no matter how fit we are, at some point, we're just going to start atrophying. But let's say we still go about it every day, and then we just go out there and do a little bit of strength training, a little bit of running. We're going to we'll maintain pretty well, right? Like we might not be as good as we are, but imagine we just pushed it a little bit further. Then we might even elevate up even at any age, right? Like depending on what we would be training for. And so for me, it's like understanding that you really don't, like having that person understand whether they're 25, 35, 45, 55, whatever up the scale, like they don't have a choice in the fact that they can control their situation, but they don't control the nature of their bodies, because every day, like we're not going to get today back, right? Like we're going to be a day older tomorrow. And then it's just a small compounding that either it's going to be negative, that's your choice, or it's going to be positive, and that's your choice. But it's really up to you, because you don't have a choice what nature is going to do to you overall. You're going to have to like do something yourself. And I think to have people really grasp that big thinking picture of like, okay, like think down the line, almost like, they say like, start with the end result. Okay. What's your best picture for you? Like Taylor, like, what do you want to be like in 10 years? And you say, oh, I want to like do this, and this. Okay, great. Well, how are we going to get there? And like almost like backtrack back to today and say, okay, well, to get there, this is what we're going to do, right? Like we need to start out here, and you start out very small, like, right? Okay. Maybe it's just someone trying to like walk a mile, right? Maybe it's walk 400 meters, walk one lap around their high school track, or maybe it's somebody that's trying to like, get their belt buckle in an endurance race, right? Like, I mean, who knows? But it's just a matter of like trying, because no one's going to care more than you, right? But it's up to you to really try to make sure that you start at some point. Because if not, you're just going to atrophy. And to me, that's almost like it's fearful on my end. It's like, wow, like you just want to like let your body just go, right? Really? You only get one, like, like, and you get one shot at life, and you try to make it the best that you can.
What patterns have you seen in people who stay strong and committed over long periods of time, say decades versus weeks, the kind of boom and bust approach? Have you noticed any, kind of
for sure.
standard patterns there?
Definitely stronger than their excuses. They just really are. They're just like, we can sit there and talk about discipline and consistency. And those are like things that I always say. It's just kind of like, you kind of got to be one of those people when your alarm clock goes off in the morning, you got to get up. Like, I don't care if you're tired or not. Like, you just got to get up and just like go about your day. Like, and the same thing with like your workouts. It's just like, you got to be stronger than your excuses. Sometimes it's more comfortable, right? To like lay in bed on a Saturday and like just pull the sheets over your head or hug the pillow a little bit more. But I can guarantee that person would feel so much better after they sweat it out. The first 5 minutes of the workouts are hard. I still feel like that. I mean, you probably do too, right? A lot of times it's like, oh my God. I mean, I'm not motivated every day. I've been working out since I was 5, right? Like, there's a lot of times I just think of it like, my wife's just like, you're so ingrained with it. Like, it's just literally part of your life, and which is great. And, but at the same time, other people that it's not technically part of their life, or maybe haphazardly part of their life throughout different decades of their life, or, maybe they played high school sports in their 20s, they were busy with work, and like, then in their 30s, they wanted to get back in shape after they had children, or they're having children, or they want to have children, or like they've had someone passed away that's close to them for a certain ailment. They're like, well, I got to get my act together. I can't just like eat fried foods and drink alcohol all the time anymore. I got to like, my dad or my uncle or my mom or somebody passed away from heart disease. I really got to get it going together. I'm tipping the scale too heavy. Whatever it might be. Sometimes in your 30s or 40s, you kind of get that, like, that's some sort of, I don't know, maybe it's a scare or some sort of enlightening moment that says, whoa, either I'm going to go down like this path or that path. And you can still make a big, trajectory change for your overall path of life if you choose that right path. If you choose the wrong path, it's the wrong path, and it's going to catch up to you at some point. Just say it what it is. But you got to be, you got to get after, like, you got to get after your demons more than the demons get after you, I guess is the best way of putting it. And it's just like, you control your situation. Don't get like, be stronger than your excuses at the end of the day. That's what it is.
Are there any misconceptions that you feel like are prevalent when it comes to aging and what the body, quote unquote, can't do? Because I know that's one of the things that gets, as we talk about this kind of like, when you kind of get over that hump, right, middle age or whatever, then that becomes something. It's not only just time. It's, I can't do that. I can't, blah, blah. I'm just curious. What are what are like the top 3 things you're like, no, that's crap. Like, that's not true.
I agree. All right. One is like being stronger, or just like lifting with weights, or just any sort of tension, right? Tendons and joints get stronger when you put them under tension, but they move properly, right? Like, if your knees tracking out over your toes in a squat and you're pushing through your heels, you can put tension in there and your knees are going to reward you. but if your like knees are wobbly and you look like a weak baby deer and they're concaving in, well, your ACL will tell you that, right? In a bad way. Right. There's, if your form's proper, right, and you have proper coaching about what proper form is, and you build slow and steady, your body will reward you immensely at any age. What happens is, like ego working out or ego lifting, if you will. I think, in my 20s, I learned very quickly. I was like, oh, my shoulder just doesn't like that. Or like, I'm like, oh, I was probably going up too quickly. And it's more about like maintaining and then building slow and steady wins the race, back to endurance, right? So it's not necessary. You might be like training for like heavy lifts in the gym or heavy DL, heavy bench, pull-ups, whatever it might be. But like at the end of the day, if you can just go slow and steady, and then add a little bit each week, you're going to be much better off, right? And it's about that consistency in your training. So I think that being strong is paramount to your success, but also being mobile, working on your mobility, working how the muscle works around your joint in itself. How many times have you like run into friends? I have friends. I don't know. It's always like, oh, I can't like throw the ball at my son anymore. I can't put the rollerboard into the overhead compartment in the airplane because I can't push anything over my head. And I'm like, man, that sucks. Like why can't you? And they're like, oh, well, this, that, or the other thing. And I'm like, oh, well, have you ever just like started like doing small basic movements? And then I've worked with people over the years that it's like within like a few workouts, you could just see like their posture improve, like their lats are open. But if you're like for 13 hours, you're constantly concaved in front of a computer with your shoulders anterior rotated and your core is weak and everything else that we talked about a few minutes ago, it's like, well, your body's going to be compromised in that state and get used to that state. But when you can like pull everything back, you can get up underneath the undercarriage of the armpit and the shoulder and you get everything kind of jackknifed back, right? Your posture improves, your lungs your ribs aren't sitting on top of your lungs. You're able to breathe better. You're able to have an open back and spine. Your vertebrae are open. You're taller, stronger, all of that. So I think like strength training, mobility, and I also think that the time constraint, people think that I need to work out for whatever reasons, people think in blocks of hours. And the amount of time I get a kick-ass workout in like 10, 15 minutes is like, I do those a lot. Much more than people think. People think I work out for like hours at a time. Like, no, I do so many things. Like sometimes I have my, one of my offices in the gym in our house where my studio set up for my app. And I have my computer there, but a lot of times my workflow, I'll be thinking of things, but then like, I'll be like, oh, I got to take a break for 2 minutes. I'll go like crank out a set of something on pull-ups real quick. And you don't get sweaty doing 10 pull-ups or 15 pull-ups. You just kind of like do them. And I do them like, just like you would put like pepper on top of like a dish or whatever. It's just kind of like an accessory that goes with anything, or like, if I'm like, you know what, I can do 5 by 500 meters on the row machine, the erg machine on the Concept 2. And I can just crank that out real quick. And guess what, with like 2 minutes rest, that'll take me less than 20 minutes, So like, I look at like blocks of time of which to do, and like the ability to do like some sort of push pull, some sort of like cardio based element to it with cardio and strength ideally. So I can kind of like combat like the best of like staying heart healthy, keeping mobility going, and then also keeping the strength and power going as well. And for me, that's the way I like to think about things. It's like not try to make a mountain out of a molehill, because a lot of times I don't have an hour, right, to work out. And I think for whatever reasons, people think that they have to like have an hour. You can get on a lot of good things if you just kind of like open up your mind a little bit more and realize like what you have to work out with. Your body, for instance, you like when we travel, I'll do like the calisthenic style workouts. I'll find some little hill. When my wife is Greek American, we go over to Greece, and in the summertime, I don't take weights. I take some bands with me, and there's this little hill that goes up, and like Greece is very mountainous, and there's this little hill that goes up that this place that we always get in Corfu and her parents' home island in the summertime. And it's just like I take my son out there, we do like little hill sprints, and it's done. And it's like just a little hill up to like a little grocery store. And most people look at us like we're crazy, but I'm like, oh, it's like just the perfect incline to where my 11-year-old son can do some hill sprints in the Greek heat without being exhausted and overwhelmed, because it's like, very hot over there in the summertime. So you got to be careful. We're not going on like, rock hikes or anytime soon over there in the summertime. It's just a bit too warm over there. but like you can get things done, and like a small little 30, 40-yard hill sprint and walk back and sprint back up and to get a nice little workout in takes 10, 15 minutes. But I'm very big on like being ultra efficient with your time, your scope of workout, keep it intense, but keep it manageable at the same time. So I think like strength training, mobility, and also the time of which you actually need to work those movements into your schedule. Those are probably the three biggest things that I think kind of like intercept people's positive thought process about what they could do at any age. And I hope I'm still doing that in my 80s and 90s. I really do. I think that, and obviously at a lessened intensity, but still going to kind of practice what I preach at that age too.
Love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Those are the three that come to mind for me. I know that so much of what you've built is around community as it relates to your app, and a lot of the the way that you support people and train folks all around the world. But I'm curious, what do you think the role of shared accountability plays in someone's growth and in someone's ability to stay? We're talking about consistency. We're talking about staying in it for long periods of time. What role does community play in that?
I think community is 100% essential. I think it's like the herd mentality, right? Herd mentality can help you out or can hinder you, right? Because if you kind of like, like your parents when you're younger, they'd be like, oh, look at your 5 best friends. That's who you're going to be. You've heard that, like your circle of people, right? Like if you don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. You never want to be like the most athletic or the richest person in the room. You want to kind of like, or, you want to surround yourself with people that make you kind of strive for a little bit more. Just try to be like that 1% better. If you surround yourself with those people, then you're going to, just notch yourself up a little bit more. Once again, you only get one life to live. So why won't you try to be the best that you could be? And with community, I mean, I run my app, right? I'm the owner. I'm the founder, CEO. I'm the talent in front of the camera. I'm like doing it all, right? I have a team behind me that helps me out, but it's also me. And guess what? My community inspires me to like turn it on, right? Like, 'cause sometimes there's definitely times that I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta like inspire these people. I gotta be my best self on camera. I gotta like do it all, right? But guess what? All of a sudden, like it just clicks in my head, and it's like, oh, this is bigger than me. This isn't for me. This is for them. This is for the thousands of people that log in to say, I'm here to get my best self going. And guess what? That like ignites me up like 1,000 million, times more than it would be if I was just kind of throwing it down in my gym by myself, to see that, wow, it's a better purpose beyond just myself. And I think for the end user or just anyone out there, just like, that's why like run clubs exist, right? Like the loneliness of the long distance runner, as they say, it is, and it could be, but join a run club, like for God's sakes, like get a friends group going or whatever, it's a lot more fun when you can do things with other people. And they can be like better than you, they could be maybe striving to be at your level or whatever. But back to what we led with in the beginning of my dad, of course, my dad, when I was 5, was much faster than me, but he was still able to get faster because he was targeting me out 50 yards as his rabbit, right? So you can always train with people. You might just have to figure out a way to like have them be your rabbit in life, or maybe you're the rabbit for that person to help them get better. There's a lot of times in this endurance world where you might have spouses that need to train, right? Like one spouse needs to train. So like the other one is like, all right, honey, I'll like ride the bike next to you while you do your runs, or vice versa, right? But at least they're like spending the time together. They're pushing each other. But I just think like community, whether it's one extra person or hundreds, dozens, thousands of people, whatever it might be, I just think it gets you going in the best way possible. And it realizes that you're there for something bigger, and to realize that hundreds of other people are sweating it out with you just feels a little bit better at times, right? Like you're like, oh, there's a bunch of like amazing people that are going to like lead a better life today. They're going to start out with a smile on their face. They're going to be having endorphins released. And then when they, like they put on their shirt or whatever, they're going to be like, oh, my bicep feels a little bit sore from that workout today or whatever, in a good way. Or if they have a chuckle 10 hours later and like their ribs like jostle up their abdominal muscles, they're like, oh, that's one of the things I like to say. I was like, oh yeah, like make sure no one makes you laugh too hard today or whatever at the end of like a harder ab workout. Cause it's true. It feels kind of good. You're like, oh, just like a little, small amount of like, oh yeah, those muscles got work today. That feels good, right? It's kind of like that endorphin release after you run. Like what's funny is when I run, I don't run as much as I used to, as I stated, but like the days I run, I always feel like so much more relaxed. I really do. And it's just like, you realize like that how running kind of gives you that runner's high. If you run almost all the time, you almost don't feel that runner's high because you're just so used to it. But when you run just like a moderate amount, all of a sudden, like those days, it just is like, whoa, it's like you got a full body massage. You went in like the sauna cold tank plunge back and forth or whatever. And you just feel like super chill, relaxed. And so for me, like, that's always a fun thing to like figure out with like community, how to like keep it paying you forward and making you your best self possible too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking about being your best self. I've kind of one of my personal mantras for a long time has been that fitness is a really fun and cool byproduct of exercise, but it's not the primary like result, because I see how that shows up in all areas of my life. And I know that it's a cornerstone. From your perspective, how do you, and from your experience with, working with thousands of folks, what role does that play in other areas of people's lives when they engage in consistent exercise and they find something that works for them and they, tap into community and all these things we're talking about? Like, what do they get over and above just fitness and a body that feels good?
I think they become role models. I think they become role models for themselves, their spouses, their families, if they're parents for their kids, and their colleagues in the workforce, in their businesses. There's a reason why, like, I think that you used to see at a very high business level, kind of like back in the 80s, the power lunch was like the 2 martini lunch and the steaks and everything else. And now amongst the highest level CEOs, you start to see this like big push towards longevity and fitness and health. And like everyone's trying to like turn the clock back, not necessarily to get to like, like be younger, but to feel younger, because they realize that the energy they can put forth, they're going to get so much more out of their bodies and their mind to actually be their best self and lead their companies better or lead their families better or be the spouse that their counterpart deserves. And it just, it's just like a way to understand that you could just be a little bit better each and every day for yourself. And when you do that, I always like to say, put that smile on you. When I finish up workouts, I'm like, okay. And, you put that smile on your face. Now everyone else around you will have that smile on their face too, right? A smile goes a long way because you truthfully do. It's not to be cheesy. It's just like you worked out, you feel better. There's scientifically proven you will feel better after you exercise. No hands down. Like you might feel tired. You might feel, like a little exhausted, maybe depending on the intensity of the workout. But within 5 minutes, you're going to feel a ton better. Hydrate up, shower up, change. The rest of your day is going to go that much better. Always does. Always does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel. That's what I tell myself. Like you mentioned it earlier. Like, yeah, I'm not motivated all the time, and I tell people, I'm like, I very rarely feel like working out. It's not people assume that folks, like me and like you that have, are actively involved and fitness has been a part of their life for a long time, that it becomes easier. And it does, it's ingrained. Like you said, I'm on autopilot. I just exercise. I wake up, I do it. It's done. Like, but I mean, there's a handful of times, I'm like, all right, I have all this energy and the time is right. And no, usually it's like everybody else, right? It's crammed in between a million different things. I'm tired.
Exactly.
Things on my mind. But I know that when I do that, it allows me to be the person I want to be in all other areas of my life, right? It's the husband I want to be, the leader I want to be, the person I need to be in my businesses. With that in mind, I think we're kind of, we're talking about like mindset shifts. What's a mindset shift that you feel like everyone could or maybe should make when we think about this kind of long-term growth, both for their fitness as well as their life?
All right, that's very poignant. So the mindset shift I think that people really need is to understand that they need this, right? Like they need to feel as good as possible because they're not going to get today back. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And it's just about like, what can I do today to like be my best self? Right. You can go like feeling tight, weak, angry, right? But the minute you start to open up your hips, your hamstrings, you get a little stronger, you sweat a little bit, you release a couple endorphins, it's contagious. And it's just going to make you that much better for everything else that you do. Whether it doesn't matter what you do in life as a profession, right? It doesn't matter if you have children or you don't have children, but to be a role model for those around you, and more specifically a role model for yourself when you look in the mirror, I think that's worth its weight in gold. I really do.
I couldn't agree more. I think, yeah, it's like, yeah, you owe it to yourself to live up to or recognize your full potential. Like it seems like, to me, it always feels like if I can, I should, like I owe it to myself, and I owe it to the people that care about me, and I owe it to the people who are rooting for me to like show up and give it my all, and I think, yeah, like you said, you deserve it, and you need this, so I think that's great. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Chris. I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your passion, your expertise, and all the good stuff you're putting out in the world. And yeah, thank you so much for making the time for us.
Of course, Taylor. I really appreciate you keeping me on get me on the Endurance Podcast with yourselves, and just to wish you and your wife and all your listeners all the best and staying strong, just getting on after it the best they can.
Thanks, Chris.